The stagecoach rattled violently as it rolled over a deep rut, jolting Sophia Kendrick from her fitful slumber. She awoke with a gasp, clutching her small valise to her chest as if it contained all the hope she had left in the world. And perhaps it did. The vast Wyoming landscape stretched endlessly outside the dusty window, a sea of golden prairie grass swaying beneath the azure sky of 1875. She had traveled over 2,000 miles from Boston, leaving behind the ashes of her former life to become a mail-order bride to a man she had never met. "First time out west, miss?" The elderly woman sitting across from her smiled kindly, her face a roadmap of wrinkles that spoke of decades under the harsh frontier sun. Sophia nodded, attempting to smooth the wrinkles from her once fine traveling dress. "Yes, madam. I'm to be married to a rancher near Willow Creek." "Mail order?" the woman asked without judgment in her tone. "Yes." Sophia's cheeks flushed. There was no shame in it. Thousands of women had made similar journeys west since the war ended, but still she felt the need to explain. "After my father's business failed and he passed, there were few options left for me in Boston." The woman nodded sympathetically. "Many a fine woman has started anew out here. What's your intended's name?" "Dear, Mr. Garrett Reynolds." Sophia's fingers absently traced the edges of the letter tucked in her pocket, the one containing his proposal and the money for her passage west. "He owns a cattle ranch." "Reynolds?" The woman's eyebrows arched. "I believe I've heard that name. Keeps to himself mostly, from what folks say." Before Sophia could inquire further, the stagecoach lurched to a stop, and the driver called out, "Willow Creek, end of the line." Stepping down from the stagecoach, Sophia's boots hit the dusty main street of what could barely be called a town, a single thoroughfare lined with weathered buildings, a general store, a saloon, a small church, and what appeared to be a sheriff's office. Clutching her valise in the small trunk containing all her worldly possessions, she scanned the faces of the few people milling about, wondering which might be her future husband. "Miss Kendrick?" a deep voice called from behind her. Sophia turned to find a tall man approaching, his stride purposeful. He wore simple but clean clothes, a cotton shirt beneath a leather vest, denim trousers, and well-worn boots. His dark blonde hair was partially hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and several days' worth of stubble shadowed his strong jaw. But it was his eyes that captured her attention, a clear green that seemed to assess everything in a single glance. "Mr. Reynolds?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. He nodded curtly. "Garrett Reynolds. Your journey was acceptable." "Yes, thank you. Long, but without incident." He glanced at her trunk. "Is this all your belongings?" "Yes, sir." Without further conversation, he hefted her trunk onto his shoulder as if it weighed nothing. "The wagon's this way. We've got a fair ride ahead of us." Sophia followed him to a sturdy wagon hitched to two strong horses. He secured her trunk in the back and then extended a hand to help her climb up to the seat. His palm was calloused but warm against hers, and for a fleeting moment, Sophia wondered what sort of life awaited her with this taciturn man. The first hour of their journey passed in uncomfortable silence. Sophia stole occasional glances at her future husband, trying to discern something of his character from his profile. His features were handsome in a rugged way, but his expression revealed little beyond concentration on the trail ahead. "Your letters didn't mention much about the ranch," she finally ventured. "Not much to tell that matters on paper," he replied without looking at her. "It's hard work, long days, especially now that—" He stopped himself. "Now that what, Mr. Reynolds?" He adjusted his grip on the reins. "Now that I've expanded the herd, nearly 500 head of cattle now." Sophia sensed there was more he wasn't saying, but she didn't press. "And the house, is it large?" "Large enough. 3 bedrooms, kitchen, parlor. Nothing fancy like you might be used to back east. I assure you, Mr. Reynolds, I'm not accustomed to luxury. My father's financial troubles saw to that long before his passing." Something in her tone must have reached him, for he finally turned to look at her properly. "Miss Kendrick, I should make something clear. When I sent for a bride, I was looking for someone practical, someone who understands that life out here isn't like those dime novels they sell back east. It's hard and often lonely." "I understand that, sir." "Do you?" His gaze was penetrating. Because once we're married, there's no stagecoach waiting to take you back if you change your mind. Sophia straightened her spine. Mr. Reynolds, I left nothing behind worth returning to. I'm fully committed to building a new life here, however challenging it may be. He studied her for a moment longer before giving a single nod and returning his attention to the trail. We'll be married by the circuit preacher when he comes through next week. Until then, you can stay in the spare bedroom. The landscape changed as they traveled, prairie giving way to rolling hills dotted with pine and aspen. The afternoon sun cast long shadows by the time Garrett pointed ahead to a valley nestled between two gentle ridges. There it is, Reynolds Ranch. Sophia leaned forward, taking in the sight of a large log house with a covered porch, several outbuildings, and a substantial barn. Smoke curled from the chimney, and in the distance she could see cattle grazing on the verdant grassland. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way that made her heart quicken, with both apprehension and something akin to anticipation. As they approached the house, a middle-aged woman emerged onto the porch, wiping her hands on an apron. Beside her stood a young boy of perhaps 10 or 11 years, watching their arrival with undisguised curiosity. Garrett brought the wagon to a stop and jumped down. "Mrs. Henson takes care of the cooking and cleaning," he explained as he came around to help Sophia down. "And that's her son, Tommy." "You didn't mention there were others living here," Sophia said quietly. "They don't live here. They have a small house about a mile west. Mrs. Henson comes in during the day." He lowered his voice. "I thought it best to have her here when you arrived, for propriety's sake." The woman approached, offering a tentative smile. "Welcome to Willow Creek, Miss Kendrick. I've prepared a hot meal for you both." "Thank you, Mrs. Henson. That's very kind." Tommy darted forward, eyes bright with excitement. "Are you going to be Mr. Reynolds' wife? Pa says he ordered you from a catalog like Ma orders seed for her garden." "Tommy!" Mrs. Henson scolded, her face flushing red. Garrett cleared his throat. "Tommy, why don't you help me with Miss Kendrick's trunk?" As the males busied themselves with her luggage, Mrs. Henson leaned closer to Sophia. "Don't mind my boy. He speaks before he thinks. But I'm glad Mr. Reynolds has found himself a wife. This place needs a woman's touch, and he needs—" She trailed off, seeming to reconsider her words. "He needs what, Mrs. Henson?" Sophia prompted. The woman smiled sadly. "Someone to share the burden, I suppose. It's been hard since his brother passed last winter." Before Sophia could inquire further, Garrett returned. "Let me show you the house, Miss Kendrick." The interior of the ranch house was surprisingly spacious, with high ceilings and large windows that allowed ample light. The furniture was simple but well crafted, and everything was meticulously clean. Garrett showed her through the main rooms with the efficiency of someone unaccustomed to playing host. "And this will be your room," he said, opening a door to reveal a modest but comfortable bedroom with a quilt-covered bed, a chest of drawers, and a small writing desk. "My room is across the hall." "It's lovely," Sophia said, genuinely pleased. After months of boarding house accommodations in Boston, this private space felt luxurious. "You should rest before supper," Garrett suggested, his tone softening slightly. The journey must have been tiring. Left alone in her new room, Sophia sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself a moment of pure relief. Whatever lay ahead, she had made it to Wyoming, to a home that was sturdy and clean, to a man who, while not overtly warm, seemed decent and hard-working. It was more than many mail-order brides could claim. She washed her face in the basin provided, changed into a fresh dress, and repinned her dark hair before joining the others for the evening meal. The dining table was laden with a hearty beef stew, fresh bread, and preserved peaches. Conversation over supper was primarily carried by Tommy, who eagerly described the local wildlife to Sophia, while Mrs. Henson occasionally interjected with gentle corrections to his more fantastical claims. Garrett ate silently, though Sophia noticed his lips twitch with amusement at some of Tommy's more outlandish stories. As Mrs. Henson began clearing the dishes, Garrett finally addressed Sophia directly. "I should explain what I'll expect from you once we're married." Mrs. Henson paused, looking uncomfortable. "Perhaps I should take Tommy home now." "No need," Garrett replied. "Nothing I'm going to say can't be heard by others." Sophia folded her hands in her lap, bracing herself. The advertisement had mentioned household duties, but she knew that many Western men wanted wives primarily as unpaid labor. "The ranch needs managing," Garrett began. "Meals need cooking, clothes need mending, the house needs keeping. I'll be honest, Miss Kendrick, I need a woman who can work hard. Mrs. Henson has been helping, but she has her own home to tend to. I need someone who can take on the responsibilities of running this household full time." Sophia nodded. "I understand, Mr. Reynolds. I'm prepared to fulfill those duties." "Good, because while I'll provide for you and protect you, I expect you to earn your keep. You'll essentially be a servant to this ranch's needs." The word landed like a physical blow. Servant, not wife, not partner servant. Mrs. Henson made a small sound of disapproval, quickly disguised as a cough, but Sophia didn't miss the look she shot at Garrett. "I see," Sophia said carefully. "And will there be any wifely duties beyond household management?" Garrett's ears reddened slightly. "That's a discussion for another time." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room, broken only by the clinking of dishes as Mrs. Henson resumed her work with perhaps more vigor than necessary. Sophia cleared her throat. "Mr. Reynolds, I agreed to become your wife, not your servant. While I fully intend to contribute to this household and understand the work involved, I hope we might build something more than an arrangement of convenience." Garrett's expression remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Miss Kendrick, I've been plain in my letters about needing a practical woman. If you've come expecting romance—" "I've come expecting a marriage," she interrupted, surprising even herself with her boldness. "One built on mutual respect, if not affection." For a long moment, Garrett simply looked at her, and Sophia feared she'd overstepped. Then, unexpectedly, he inclined his head in what might have been acknowledgement. "Fair enough. We'll discuss this further after Mrs. Henson and Tommy have gone." The remainder of the meal passed in strained silence. When Mrs. Henson announced her departure, Sophia felt a flutter of anxiety at being left alone with her soon-to-be husband. "I'll return in the morning," Mrs. Henson said to Sophia as she donned her shawl. "If you need anything before then, don't hesitate to ask Mr. Reynolds." Her emphasis on the last words seemed pointed, though Sophia couldn't decipher the meaning behind it. Once their guests had departed, Garrett gestured for Sophia to join him in the parlor. He built up the fire against the evening chill before taking a seat opposite her. "You spoke your mind at supper," he said without preamble. "I apologize if I embarrassed you in front of Mrs. Henson, but I felt it necessary to clarify my position." He studied her with those penetrating green eyes. "No need for apologies. In fact, I respect your forthrightness. It's a quality that serves well out here." Sophia hadn't expected that response. "Thank you. However," he continued, "you should understand my situation. This ranch is everything to me. I've worked myself to the bone building it, especially since losing my brother last winter. I need someone who understands that the ranch must come first. I understand dedication to one's livelihood, Mr. Reynolds. My father built his shipping business from nothing. I watched him work from dawn to dusk for years. And yet his business failed," Garrett observed. Sophia felt a flash of indignation. Through no fault of his work ethic, the financial panic of '73 ruined many businesses, including those far more established than my father's. Garrett nodded slowly. "I apologize. That was unfair of me. May I ask what happened to your brother?" Sophia ventured after a moment. Pain flickered across Garrett's face before he masked it. "Daniel took ill after falling through ice during a winter cattle drive. Pneumonia. The doctor from town couldn't reach us in time." He stared into the fire. "He was the one with the easy manner, good with people. I'm better with cattle." The admission seemed to cost him, and Sophia sensed she was seeing a glimpse of the man beneath the stoic exterior. "I'm truly sorry for your loss," she said softly. Garrett acknowledged her sympathy with a slight nod. "Daniel always said I needed a wife who wouldn't let me get away with being surly." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Seems he might have gotten his wish." The comment broke some of the tension between them. "Mr. Reynolds, I want to be clear. I'm not afraid of hard work. I'll gladly contribute to this ranch's success. But I didn't travel across the country to be merely a hired hand you happen to share a surname with. What did you come for, Miss Kendrick?" There was genuine curiosity in his voice, a chance to build something meaningful, a home, perhaps in time, a family. She met his gaze steadily. And I hope to find someone I could respect and who would respect me in return. Something shifted in Garrett's expression. I misspoke at supper. You're not to be a servant here. You'll be my wife, and as such, my partner in this endeavor. He hesitated, then added more quietly, I'm not skilled with words, Miss Kendrick. Daniel was the one who could charm with conversation. I tend to speak plainly, sometimes too plainly. I appreciate plain speaking, Mr. Reynolds. It leaves less room for misunderstanding. Then let me speak plainly now. I can promise you respect and honesty. I can promise to provide for you and protect you, but I can't promise the kind of affection you might have read about in novels. Sophia felt a twinge of disappointment, but appreciated his candor. I'm not expecting a grand romance, Mr. Reynolds. Just the opportunity to build a life of mutual benefit and, hopefully, growing regard. Garrett considered her words, then extended his hand as if to seal a business arrangement. Then we have an understanding. Sophia placed her hand in his, noting how small hers looked enveloped in his calloused palm. We do. That night, as Sophia prepared for bed in her new room, she reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought her to this remote ranch. Her future husband was not what she had imagined, neither the charming gentleman some women hoped for, nor the brutish taskmaster many feared. Garrett Reynolds was complex, reserved, and clearly wounded by his brother's death. Whether they could forge a genuine partnership remained to be seen, but at least he had acknowledged her as more than a servant. It was a beginning, however modest. Dawn arrived with a cacophony of sounds unfamiliar to Sophia's city. Raised ears roosters crowing, cattle lowing in the distance, and the rhythmic chopping of wood that suggested Garrett was already at work. She dressed quickly in one of her simpler dresses and made her way to the kitchen, determined to begin as she meant to go on. To her surprise, she found Garrett at the stove, frying bacon in a cast-iron skillet. He glanced up at her entrance. You're an early riser, he observed. That's good. I thought I might prepare breakfast, Sophia said, feeling oddly disappointed that he'd beaten her to this first wifely task. Mrs. Henson doesn't arrive until mid-morning. I've been cooking for myself since Daniel. He cleared his throat. Well, for some months now. Then perhaps you'll allow me to make the coffee, Sophia suggested, unwilling to be completely useless on her first morning. Garrett nodded, gesturing to the coffee pot and the canister of grounds. As Sophia busied herself with this task, she became aware of his occasional glances. Was he assessing her abilities, wondering if she would prove useful or burdensome? I thought I might show you around the ranch today, he said, as they sat down to a simple breakfast of bacon, biscuits left by Mrs. Henson the previous day, and strong black coffee. You should know the place you'll be calling home. I'd like that very much, Sophia replied, genuinely eager to explore her new surroundings. After breakfast, Garrett led her on a tour of the immediate property, the barn where he kept his horses and a cow for milk, the chicken coop, the smokehouse, and the vegetable garden that Mrs. Henson had started, but, which Garrett admitted, had suffered from inconsistent attention. I know little about gardening, Sophia confessed, surveying the somewhat neglected rows of plants. But I'm willing to learn. Mrs. Henson can teach you. She's got a way with growing things. They walked further, cresting a small hill that offered a view of the pastures where cattle grazed. In the distance, two men on horseback moved among the herd. My ranch hands, Frank and Emmett, Garrett explained. Good men. They live in the bunkhouse beyond the barn. You have a beautiful property, Sophia said, genuinely impressed by the vastness of it. The ranch stretched toward distant mountains, the land rich and promising. It's taken 8 years to build it to this point. Daniel and I came out here right after the war with nothing but a wagon of supplies and some breeding stock. Pride tinged his voice. This valley was untouched then. We were the first to settle it. You fought in the war? Sophia asked, realizing how little she knew of this man she was to marry. Garrett nodded, his expression growing distant. Union cavalry. Daniel, too. We saw things. He shook his head. After Appomattox, we couldn't stomach going back to Pennsylvania, needed open space and a fresh start. My father lost his first shipping business during the war, Sophia offered, sensing his need to move away from wartime memories. Confederate privateers took 2 of his vessels. He rebuilt afterward, only to lose everything again in 73. Garrett studied her. You've seen hardship then. Different from yours, but yes. They stood in silence for a moment, the shared understanding of loss creating an unexpected connection between them. I should check on the south pasture fencing, Garrett finally said. Would you like to ride along, or would you prefer to settle into the house? Sophia hesitated only briefly. I'd like to come with you, if it's not an imposition. Something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. Can you ride? It's been some years, but yes. I'll saddle a gentle mare for you. In the barn, Garrett efficiently prepared 2 horses, a spirited chestnut stallion for himself, and a docile bay mare for Sophia. He helped her mount with strong, sure hands at her waist, the brief contact sending an unexpected warmth through her, despite the morning chill. The ride to the south pasture took them through a landscape of breathtaking beauty. Wildflowers dotted the meadows, and a clear stream wound its way through the property. Sophia found herself relaxing into the gentle rhythm of the mare's gait, enjoying the freedom of movement after days confined to stagecoaches and train carriages. You ride well for someone out of practice, Garrett commented as they rode side by side. My father believed all proper young ladies should know how to ride, even in the city, Sophia explained. Though I confess Boston's park paths are rather different from this terrain. You'll adapt quickly. Everything out here requires adaptation. At the south fence line, Garrett dismounted to inspect a section that had been damaged, possibly by an elk or bear pushing through. Sophia watched as he worked, noting the efficient movement of his hands as he repaired the broken rails. There was something compelling about his quiet competence. May I ask about the wedding arrangements? Sophia ventured as they rode back toward the ranch house. You mentioned a circuit preacher? Reverend Michaels comes through every few weeks. He's due next Thursday. I thought we might marry then, if that suits you. Only a week away. Sophia's heart quickened. That seems sensible. We should go into town tomorrow. You'll need a few supplies, and you should meet some of the townspeople. They'll be curious about you. Will they? The idea of being an object of curiosity made Sophia uncomfortable. Garrett's mouth quirked in what might have been amusement. News travels fast out here. The confirmed bachelor Garrett Reynolds sending for a mail-order bride. That's been the talk of Willow Creek since I posted the letter. Sophia couldn't help but smile. And what are they expecting? Some desperate spinster, I imagine. They're expecting whoever I chose, Garrett replied simply. And I chose you. The words, matter-of-fact as they were, warmed Sophia unexpectedly. When they returned to the ranch house, they found Mrs. Henson already at work preparing the midday meal. She greeted Sophia warmly. Did you sleep well, Miss Kendrick? The mountain air takes some getting used to, I know. Quite well, thank you. And please, call me Sophia. Then you must call me Martha, the older woman replied with a smile. I've made a stew for dinner and brought some fresh bread. I thought perhaps afterward I might show you around the kitchen, familiarize you with where everything is kept. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Garrett excused himself to tend to ranch business, leaving the women to become acquainted. As they worked side by side in the kitchen, Martha proved to be a wealth of information not only about household management in this remote setting, but also about the community of Willow Creek. It's a small town, but decent folks mostly. The general store is run by the Millers. They're fair with their prices. Dr. Parker comes through regular like, and there's a schoolhouse that was built last year. She paused in her work. Do you hope to have children, Sophia? The directness of the question startled her. I suppose I do, eventually. Mr. Reynolds and I haven't discussed family plans. Martha nodded thoughtfully. Children would be good for this place. Good for him, too, I think. She lowered her voice. He took Daniel's passing hard. Blamed himself, though there was nothing he could have done differently. Blamed himself? Why? It was Garrett who insisted they check the North Ridge cattle that day, despite the ice on the creek. When Daniel fell through, she shook her head. Well, Garrett's carried that weight ever since. Sophia's heart ached at the thought of Garrett harboring such guilt. That explains some of his reserve. He wasn't always so closed off, Martha said, her tone softening with memory. The Reynolds brothers used to be the life of any gathering in town. Daniel was the charmer, sure, but Garrett had a laugh that could fill a room. Haven't heard it since before Daniel took sick. This glimpse into the man Garrett had once been intrigued Sophia. What would it take, she wondered, to draw out that side of him again? As promised, the following day Garrett took Sophia into Willow Creek. The small frontier town looked more welcoming in the morning light than it had upon her arrival. Garrett helped her down from the wagon in front of the general store, where a small group of women had already gathered, making little effort to disguise their curiosity. "Word travels fast," he murmured close to her ear, his breath warm against her skin. Inside the store, they were greeted by a jovial man with impressive mutton chop whiskers. "Garrett Reynolds, about time you brought your bride to be to meet us civilized folk. Sophia, this is Herbert Miller. He owns the place and knows everyone's business," Garrett said, though there was no real censure in his tone. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Kendrick." "My wife's been beside herself with excitement since we heard Garrett here had sent for a bride." Herbert pumped Sophia's hand enthusiastically. "Any friend of Garrett's is a friend of ours." "That's very kind, Mr. Miller. Now, what can I help you folks with today?" Garrett handed Sophia a small leather pouch. "Get whatever you need. I have some business at the bank." Left alone to make her purchases, Sophia was quickly surrounded by the town's women, led by Mrs. Miller, a plump, friendly woman with bright eyes that missed nothing. "We're just so pleased Garrett's finally settling down," she gushed. "Such a tragedy about Daniel. We worried Garrett might never recover from it." "It's been a difficult time for him," Sophia acknowledged cautiously. "And now he's got himself a Boston bride. My stars, you must find our little town terribly provincial." "Not at all," Sophia assured her. "Willow Creek seems charming." The women peppered her with questions as she selected fabric for curtains and a few personal necessities. Where in Boston was she from? Did she have family? How had she come to correspond with Garrett? Sophia answered as honestly as she could, while maintaining her dignity, aware that every word would be dissected and discussed after her departure. By the time Garrett returned, Sophia had been thoroughly, if politely, interrogated. The relief on her face must have been evident, for his mouth quirked in that almost smile she was coming to recognize. "Ladies," he greeted the assembled women with a tip of his hat, "I trust you've made Miss Kendrick feel welcome." "Oh, indeed we have," Mrs. Miller assured him, "and we've invited you both to Sunday dinner after services this weekend." Garrett looked to Sophia, seeming to leave the decision to her. "That sounds lovely," she said, genuinely touched by the invitation. Their next stop was the dressmaker, a stern-looking woman named Mrs. Fletcher, who eyed Sophia's Eastern-cut traveling dress with professional interest. "Boston fashion, is it? Well, you'll want something more practical for ranch life, though perhaps a special dress for the wedding?" "Just the essentials for now," Garrett said before Sophia could respond. Then, catching himself, he added, "Though if Miss Kendrick wishes for something special for our wedding day, that would be acceptable." Sophia appreciated his belated deference to her wishes. Perhaps something simple but new for the wedding, and then practical dresses for every day. As Mrs. Fletcher took her measurements, Sophia noticed Garrett watching with an intensity that brought warmth to her cheeks. When their eyes met, he didn't look away, and something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement, perhaps, that they were embarking on this journey together, whatever it might hold. The days leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of activity as Sophia familiarized herself with the ranch routine. Each morning she rose early to prepare breakfast before Garrett headed out to work. Martha Henson continued to visit daily, teaching Sophia the particulars of managing a remote household, how to preserve food for the harsh winters, which local plants had medicinal properties, how to predict weather changes from the way smoke rose from the chimney. Garrett remained reserved, but Sophia began to notice subtle changes in his behavior. He lingered longer at breakfast, occasionally sharing stories about the ranch's early days, or asking about her life in Boston. He brought her wildflowers one evening, casually placing them on the table with a gruff, "Thought these might brighten the house." And once, when she struggled to reach a high shelf in the pantry, his hands at her waist to steady her remained a moment longer than necessary, his touch gentle despite his calloused palms. The evening before Reverend Michaels was due to arrive, Sophia sat on the porch, watching the sunset, paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Garrett joined her, offering a cup of coffee as he settled into the chair beside hers. "Nervous about tomorrow?" he asked, after they had sat in companionable silence for several minutes. A bit, she admitted. It's a significant step, marrying a man I've only known for a week. Garrett nodded, his gaze on the distant mountains. You could still change your mind. I wouldn't hold you to it if you've reconsidered. The offer surprised her. Have you reconsidered, Mr. Reynolds? No. His answer came without hesitation. But I want to be certain you're entering this marriage willingly, with eyes open to what it entails. Sophia turned to study his profile, strong and steady in the fading light. I am, are you? He met her gaze then, his green eyes solemn. I am. But there's something you should know before tomorrow. He took a deep breath. I haven't been entirely forthcoming about my circumstances. Alarm flared in Sophia's chest. What do you mean? The ranch is in financial trouble. The bank holds a substantial note against it, due at the end of summer. If the cattle drive doesn't bring in enough to cover it, I could lose everything. Sophia absorbed this information, understanding now the tension she sometimes saw in his shoulders, the worried crease that occasionally appeared between his brows. Why didn't you tell me this before? I didn't want to burden you with it, and... He hesitated. I was afraid you might not come if you knew how precarious things are. Do you think so little of me? Sophia asked, genuinely hurt. That I would abandon a commitment over financial concerns? Garrett looked genuinely contrite. No, I think highly of you, Sophia. Higher than you know. That's why I'm telling you now, before you bind yourself to me and my troubles. It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it on his lips affected her more than she had anticipated. I appreciate your honesty, Garrett, but I didn't come here expecting a life of ease. I came seeking partnership, and partnerships weather storms together. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, perhaps, or something deeper. Then you still wish to proceed with the wedding? I do. The traditional wedding response felt weighty on her tongue, a promise of things to come. Garrett reached across the space between their chairs and took her hand in his. Thank you. They sat in silence as darkness claimed the valley, their hands joined in a tentative but meaningful connection that spoke of growing trust. Reverend Michaels arrived the following afternoon, a jovial man with a booming voice that seemed at odds with his slight frame. The ceremony was simple, held in the parlor of the ranch house with Martha and Tommy Henson and the ranch hands as witnesses. Sophia wore her new dress, a modest creation of pale blue cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. Garrett had donned a clean white shirt and black string tie, his usually untamed hair slicked back with water. Dearly beloved, Reverend Michaels began, his voice filling the small room. We are gathered here in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. As the familiar words of the ceremony washed over her, Sophia found herself studying Garrett's face. The perpetual furrow between his brows had smoothed, and there was a softness in his expression she hadn't seen before. When the time came to exchange vows, his voice was steady, his eyes never leaving hers. I, Garrett, take thee, Sophia, to be my wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. The word love hung in the air between them, a promise neither had spoken of before this moment. When Sophia repeated her vows, she meant every word, surprising herself with the depth of her commitment to this man she was still coming to know. By the power vested in me, Reverend Michaels concluded, I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss your bride. Garrett hesitated for only a moment before leaning forward to place a gentle, almost chaste kiss on Sophia's lips. Brief as it was, the contact sent a tremor through her, a promise of something more to come. Martha insisted on serving a wedding feast, though Garrett had initially protested such fuss. The table groaned under the weight of roasted chicken, fresh vegetables from Martha's garden, biscuits with honey, and a special surprise, a small cake she had baked and hidden in her basket. Every bride deserves cake on her wedding day, Martha declared, cutting generous slices for everyone. As the afternoon waned into evening, the guests took their leave, each offering congratulations and, in Martha's case, a knowing smile that made Sophia blush. And then they were alone, truly alone, as husband and wife for the first time. Would you like some coffee? Garrett asked, his usual confidence seemingly replaced by uncertainty. Yes, thank you. They moved around the kitchen together, the routine of coffee making a welcome distraction from the awareness of what traditionally followed a wedding. When they settled at the table with their steaming cups, Garrett cleared his throat. Sophia, I want you to know that I don't expect... That is, I understand if you need time to... He ran a hand through his hair, dislodging its careful arrangement. What I'm trying to say is that I'll sleep in Daniel's old room tonight, if you prefer. The offer touched her. That's very considerate of you, Garrett. Is that what you want? Sophia considered the question carefully. This man was now her husband, yet in many ways still a stranger. But he had shown her respect and consideration, had been honest about his circumstances, and had promised to view her as a partner, not a possession. No, she finally said, meeting his gaze steadily. I don't think that's what I want. Something flared in Garrett's eyes, relief, desire, or perhaps both. Are you certain? I am. We are married now, after all. He reached across the table to take her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. We'll go as slowly as you need, Sophia. I don't want you to fear me. I don't fear you, Garrett. And she realized as she said it that it was true. Whatever uncertainty she felt about their future together, fear of the man himself was not among her concerns. Later, in the privacy of what was now their shared bedroom, Garrett was true to his word. He was gentle and patient, guiding her through the unfamiliar territory of physical intimacy, with a tenderness that belied his rugged exterior. And when they lay together afterward, her head resting on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns along her bare shoulder, Sophia felt a surprising sense of rightness. This was not the romantic love she had once dreamed of, perhaps, but it held the promise of something equally meaningful, a partnership forged in mutual respect and growing affection. Garrett, she murmured, listening to the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. His voice rumbled in his chest. Thank you for choosing me. His arm tightened around her. I think perhaps I got the better end of the bargain. As summer progressed, Sophia settled into her role as Garrett's wife and the mistress of Reynolds Ranch. Each day brought new challenges and small triumphs as she learned the rhythm of ranch life. She took over the management of the household completely, freeing Martha Henson to focus on her own home and family. She expanded the vegetable garden, experimented with preserving the summer bounty for the winter months ahead, and even learned to make cheese from the milk of their cow. Garrett began teaching her to ride properly, Western style rather than the side saddle she had learned in Boston. Their morning rides became a cherished ritual, a time when they could talk freely away from the ranch hands and daily pressures. Gradually, Sophia came to know the man beneath the stoic exterior, his dry sense of humor, his passion for the land, his deep-seated integrity, and the burden of guilt he still carried over his brother's death. In turn, she shared stories of her own past, her mother's death when she was 12, her father's descent into debt and despair, her efforts to maintain their household as their fortunes dwindled. Garrett proved to be a good listener, offering insights rather than platitudes, his respect for her resilience evident in his attentive gaze. Their physical relationship deepened alongside their emotional connection. What had begun as a tentative exploration on their wedding night evolved into a passionate communion that left Sophia breathless and Garrett unusually demonstrative, holding her close in the aftermath, as if she were something precious he feared might slip away. But beneath these growing bonds of intimacy and partnership, the financial concerns Garrett had confessed before their wedding continued to cast a shadow. Sophia became aware of it in the careful way he monitored supplies, the long hours he spent poring over ledgers at night, and the hushed conversations with Frank and Emmett about the condition of the herd and potential market prices. One evening in early August, she found him at the kitchen table surrounded by papers, his expression grim in the lamplight. The numbers still aren't adding up, he said without looking up as she placed a cup of coffee beside him. How bad is it? Sophia asked, taking the chair opposite him. Garrett rubbed his eyes wearily. Bad enough. The drought last year meant we had to buy extra feed to get the herd through winter. That, plus the loan I took to expand the herd after Daniel. He shook his head. The bank wants payment in full by October 1st. Even with a successful cattle drive, We'll be short by at least $500. Sophia reached for his hand. There must be something we can do. I've considered selling part of the land, but no one around here has that kind of cash. And selling now, when we're in a tight spot, means accepting far less than it's worth. What about my dowry? Sophia suggested. The money my father set aside for me. It's not a fortune, but it might help. Garrett's head snapped up. Your dowry? You never mentioned having one. It wasn't relevant when we were corresponding. It's only $300 held in trust by my father's lawyer in Boston. I can write to him and request it be sent. Hope flickered across Garrett's face before his expression hardened. No, I won't take your money, Sophia. I didn't marry you for financial gain. Garrett, she said patiently, we're partners now, remember? Your troubles are my troubles. If I have resources that can help us save our home, why wouldn't I offer them? He studied her face for a long moment. Our home, he repeated softly. You've come to think of it that way, haven't you? Of course I have. It is my home now. Our home. Something shifted in his gaze, a warming that made her breath catch. Sophia Reynolds, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You are the most remarkable woman I've ever known. Her heart swelled at the use of her married name. Does that mean you'll accept my help? It means, he said, rising and drawing her to her feet, that I'm grateful beyond words for whatever twist of fate brought you to my doorstep. Before she could respond, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her with an intensity that left no doubt about his growing feelings. When they finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. Write to your lawyer, he conceded, but I'll find a way to repay you, I promise. There's no need, she assured him. What's mine is yours now. The following week brought an unexpected letter from Boston, not from Sophia's lawyer, whom she had only just written to, but from an old friend of her father's. Mr. Whitman writes that he's been searching for me, Sophia explained to Garrett over breakfast. Apparently my father held shares in a small shipping venture that Mr. Whitman has been managing. It's finally turned profitable, and as father's heir, I'm entitled to the proceeds. Garrett set down his coffee cup. How much? He doesn't specify, but he indicates it's a significant sum, enough that he advises I consider retaining a financial manager. Sophia looked up from the letter, her eyes wide with disbelief. Garrett, this could be the answer to our problems. If it's legitimate, Garrett cautioned, ever practical. We should wire Mr. Whitman to confirm the details before we count on anything. The wire was sent that very day from Willow Creek's telegraph office. The reply came 3 days later, confirming that Sophia was indeed the beneficiary of shares worth nearly $2,000, a small fortune by frontier standards. I can't believe it, Sophia whispered as they rode home from town, the telegram clutched in her hand. All this time, I thought Father left me nothing but debts. Garrett reached across to squeeze her hand. Your father left you a future, it seems. And just when we needed it most. Our future, she corrected him. What's mine is yours, remember? His smile, a full, genuine smile that transformed his features, was her reward. I remember. And I'll make sure this money secures our ranch for years to come. No more precarious financing, no more sleepless nights wondering if we'll lose everything. True to his word, Garrett used the funds prudently. He paid off the banknote, invested in breeding stock to improve the herd, and set aside a reserve for emergencies. The relief of financial security allowed him to relax in ways Sophia hadn't witnessed before. He laughed more readily, spent more time with her rather than working from dawn until well after dusk, and began making plans for improvements to the ranch house. I was thinking we might add a proper dining room, he suggested one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, his arm draped comfortably around her shoulders. And perhaps another bedroom or two. Planning for the future, Mr. Reynolds? Sophia teased, leaning into his embrace. His hand moved to rest gently on her stomach. Perhaps, if you're amenable. The tenderness in his touch made her heart flutter. I think I'd like that very much. As autumn painted the aspen trees gold and crimson, Sophia confirmed what she had begun to suspect. She was with child. The news filled Garrett with a mixture of joy and apprehension that manifested in an endearing protectiveness. He insisted she rest more, fretted about her riding horseback, and even took over some of her household duties, despite her protests that pregnancy wasn't an illness. Daniel and I helped bring calves into the world, but I know precious little about human babies, he admitted one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting protectively over the still flat plane of her stomach. I want to do everything right by both of you. We'll learn together, Sophia assured him, covering his hand with hers. That's what partners do. As winter settled over Reynolds Ranch, blanketing the valley in snow and confining them often to the warmth of the house, Sophia reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just 6 months. She had arrived in Wyoming expecting to be little more than a glorified servant to a taciturn rancher. Instead, she had found a partnership that had blossomed into genuine love, a home that truly felt like her own, and the promise of a family on the horizon. Garrett, too, had transformed. The burden of grief that had weighed so heavily on him when they met had eased. He smiled more readily, laughed often, and spoke frequently of plans for their future together. The ranch was thriving under their joint stewardship, and their home had become a place of warmth and happiness. One snowy evening in December, as they sat before the fire in the parlor, Sophia working on a blanket for the baby, while Garrett read aloud from one of the books they had ordered from back east, he suddenly set the book aside. "I've been thinking," he said, his expression serious. Sophia set down her needlework. "About what?" "About that first night you arrived, when I told you I expected you to be a servant to the ranch's needs." He shook his head, regret evident in his features. "I was a fool." "You were grieving," Sophia corrected gently, "and trying to manage alone." "Perhaps. But I want you to know how grateful I am that you stood your ground that night, that you demanded to be treated as a partner, not property." He took her hand, his thumb caressing her wedding ring. "You changed everything, Sophia. You made this house a home again. You made me whole again." Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes. "I thought I was coming west to start a new life. I never expected to find love." "Nor did I," Garrett admitted, drawing her into his arms. "But I do love you, Sophia Reynolds, more than I thought possible." As the fire crackled and snow fell softly outside their window, Sophia rested her head against her husband's chest, secure in the knowledge that their partnership had grown into something far more precious than either could have anticipated. What had begun as an arrangement of convenience, a practical solution to their individual problems, had blossomed into a deep and abiding love that would sustain them through whatever challenges lay ahead. In the wild expanse of Wyoming territory, far from the familiar streets of Boston, Sophia had found not servitude, but equality. Not mere survival, but true happiness. And Garrett, who had sought only a practical helpmate, had found instead the missing piece of his heart. The life they were building together, ranch, home, and soon family, was a testament to the power of mutual respect, shared purpose, and the unexpected gift of love that had transformed them both. As the baby grew within her and their plans for the future expanded, Sophia knew with certainty that the journey that had brought her west had led her exactly where she was meant to be, in the arms of a man who valued her not as his possession, but as his equal, his partner, his beloved wife. Spring arrived at Reynolds Ranch with a burst of new life. Wildflowers carpeted the meadows, calves frolicked alongside their mothers in the green pastures, and in the pre-dawn hours of a mild April morning, Sophia gave birth to their daughter. They named her Elizabeth Daniel Reynolds, honoring both Sophia's mother and Garrett's brother. "She has your eyes," Garrett whispered in awe as he held his tiny daughter for the first time, those green eyes that had once seemed so stern to Sophia, now soft with wonder and love. "And your determination," Sophia replied with a tired smile, watching as the infant gripped her father's finger with surprising strength. As Elizabeth grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. Garrett's innovative breeding program improved the herd, while Sophia's careful management of their finances ensured stability even in lean years. Together, they expanded the house, adding not only the dining room and additional bedrooms Garrett had envisioned, but also a spacious kitchen that became the heart of their home. Word of their success spread, and other settlers began to establish ranches and farms in the valley. Willow Creek grew from a dusty outpost to a thriving small town with a proper school, a church, and businesses that served the growing community. Sophia, with her education and natural leadership abilities, became a respected figure in town affairs, helping to establish a lending library and organizing social gatherings that brought neighbors together. Elizabeth was joined by a brother, James Garrett Reynolds, 2 years later, and eventually by another sister, Marie Martha Reynolds. The children filled the ranch with laughter and activity, growing up strong and capable under the watchful eyes of parents who balanced discipline with deep affection. On their 10th wedding anniversary, as they watched their children playing in the yard of the home they had built together, Garrett pulled Sophia close. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Answering my advertisement? Coming west to marry a stranger?" Sophia looked up at the man who had become the center of her world, still handsome despite the silver now threading through his hair at the temples. His face lined by years of work in the sun and wind, but his eyes still that same vibrant green that had first caught her attention. "Never," she answered without hesitation. "Best decision I ever made." Garrett smiled, the full, unreserved smile that had once been so rare but now came easily. "Mine too, though I came close to ruining everything that first night with my talk of servants and masters." "You've more than made up for it," Sophia assured him, thinking of the countless ways he had demonstrated his respect and love over the years, consulting her on ranch decisions, supporting her community endeavors, sharing equally in the raising of their children, and never failing to express his gratitude for her partnership. "I thank God every day that you had the courage to stand your ground," he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "That you saw something in me worth taking a chance on." "I saw a good man," Sophia replied simply. "One who needed reminding that the best partnerships are built on equality, not ownership." As the sun set over the mountains, painting the valley in gold and casting long shadows across the land they had nurtured together, Sophia reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a desperate young woman fleeing a life of genteel poverty to the confident mistress of a prosperous ranch and mother of 3. From a mail order bride expecting servitude to a beloved wife cherished as an equal partner. It had not always been easy. There had been droughts and harsh winters, financial worries and health scares. But through it all, the foundation they had established in those early days of mutual respect, shared purpose, and growing love had sustained them, allowing them to face each challenge together and emerge stronger for it. As Garrett called the children in for supper, and they all gathered around the table he had built with his own hands, Sophia looked at the faces of her family, her handsome, steadfast husband, and their beautiful, spirited children, and knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true home. Not in the physical structure of the ranch house, fine as it had become, but in the bonds of love and partnership that united them all. From unlikely beginnings, a mail-order arrangement between strangers had grown a life richer and more fulfilling than either she or Garrett could have imagined possible. And it had all begun with a simple assertion of dignity and worth, with the recognition that true partnership flourishes not in subjugation, but in equality, not in ownership, but in mutual respect. As Elizabeth regaled them with tales from school, and James proudly described helping his father with the new foal, Sophia caught Garrett's gaze across the table. The love shining in his eyes mirrored her own, a silent acknowledgement of the precious gift they had created together, not just a family or a prosperous ranch, but a partnership that had transformed them both. In the wilds of Wyoming, far from the civilization of her youth, Sophia Reynolds had not found servitude but liberation, and Garrett, who had sought merely a practical helpmate, had discovered the healing power of a love built on respect and equality. Together, they had created not just a living, but a life one that would continue to flourish long after they were gone, a legacy of partnership for their children to carry forward into the future of the West they had helped to shape.